Hey, good morning. It is 6:11 a.m. November 8th, Saturday morning. I'm just sitting here in bed. I woke up about an hour ago, and the first thought that came to my mind was my concern about my son. Now, I know that I talked about my son owing me money last night, and I know that he's been with, I think he banks with Chase or whatever, but, he had an issue where I guess they were like holding his funds, and my concern is that he's been with this bank for a while, and like I said, anything and everything that happens that's out of the ordinary, I immediately associate it with gang stalking, and the reason why is because I've dealt with so many of their illegal or their either illegal issues, them doing things that were, disrespectful, or some sort of slight, that they feel like they want to take at a person to, release their anger or be a part of the community harassment. And, I'm not, I don't want to sit here and like, meditate and try to figure out if that is the case or not. It's just that I would prefer my son look for a more reputable bank if he experiences problems like that. I know that the banks that I've used to bank at, I always bank at credit unions. I don't really mess with banks, but I feel as though I've always had decent service at my bank. I've never had any problems, but anytime I feel as though this is like a red flag or something that I should be concerned about, and that's just the way it is. I try my best not to have any real interactions with the community because of the brainwashing that went on. There's times where people might do something or they might be inconsiderate in some way. This could be even slightly, you know what I mean? And so I don't want to mess with it, and it concerns me because there's a lot of dishonesty. I did a video yesterday, or last night, and it was me talking about comparing things like the Ten Commandments versus secular law, and the reason why I said it is because, and some Christians don't even believe that we are even under the Ten Commandments, but you'll see that some do. And I was bringing this up as an example, like I believe it was the state of Oklahoma who wanted the Ten Commandments in the school system because they felt as though that was going to be some sort of moral guideline, which in some ways I agree with the Ten Commandments being somewhat of a moral guideline. But see, when it comes to secular law, it's the fact that these things can actually be penalized to where people suffer the consequences while they're here on earth, right? So like I talked about stealing, I talked about bearing false witness, I talked about, coveting and what it could lead to. And so, these are the penalties that people can pay here on earth, okay? So the penalties, like for example, the Ten Commandments are basically covered in some way, okay, in secular law, okay. So I was my what my point is when I to bring it up is that you can see that Christians are nothing but liars. They're two-faced. Now, let me tell you how the Ten Commandments come into place with modern day Christianity. Some people believe that we are no longer under the law of acknowledging the Ten Commandments. They believe that by taking on the Christ-like qualities that Christ lived, right? And Christ automatically embodied everything the Ten Commandments stood for. So, like Christ would never do the things that the Ten Commandments. So instead of having to remember all these Ten Commandments, if you were just to walk in the footsteps of Christ, you would naturally not steal. You would automatically not bear false witness. Why? Because you have adapted a specific lifestyle. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. It's like a lot of people, they think that because you go to church or you call yourself a Christian that you actually are following Christ. Okay, you're not. And see, and I'm not somebody who is like a Bible thumper or anything. It's just that I can identify what is real, spirituality and what is not, and what's being used as an excuse. You know what I mean? So, I have always had an aversion to people who, use religion as an excuse to hide what it is that they really are. And in this case, just being criminal. That's all, okay? So I did kind of, I did verbally state, because I woke up my son. I said, I was not comfortable with it. The first thing that was on my mind when I woke up is my discomfort with that transaction. Why isn't that my son does not have his full amount of money? He did say that he had, I think he had a check or something like that, but anything that, like I said, I'm letting my son understand that I'm aware. I did verbalize that I'm aware that, I do not trust Bruce, his father, and I do not trust Terry. And I wanted to make it very clear to my son that I do not find these two individuals acceptable. Okay, and I do believe that these and for whatever reason, I'm sitting here shuffling my little cards here, and I get this message that yes, these two may have been responsible for the harassment of Vladimir Putin, like I said, in some weird direct way, by maybe using other people in the congregation, their extended congregation. Think about it. In some religions, like for example, Jehovah's Witnesses, if you're a Jehovah's Witness here in Bakersfield, you can get online and communicate with Jehovah's Witnesses in Russia. I mean, this is how, I mean, that's one of the benefits of having things like email or being a part of a social media group or whatever. But anyway, I don't. I'm not comfortable with these sort of things, okay? And so, like I said, if my son needs to go look for another bank, then maybe that's the case. Now, I know that in my transactions, I have things like I've always signed up for direct deposit or whatever. I've never had issues, but any sort of issue, any sort of inconvenience that goes on, like whether there's a transaction or maybe I might even be in a line at a supermarket, and I might deal with a cashier who is not, who might be working slow just because she feels as though she wants to do, try to have some way of having exerting some sort of control. People do these little slight things, okay? And, I notice things like this in customer service. So I don't like interacting with most of these people. The intuitive message I'm getting right now is that people, do psychic readings on me. There's people who actually perform psychic readings on me, and what they're trying to find out is I don't, I think it's because some people are interested in, um, yeah, okay, so it's a lot of Christians, okay? Now, the funny thing, like I said, a lot of Christians were bashing me for being an occultist, but yet they go ahead and get things like, because, like I said, in one of my newsletters about how it's always been people who've always wanted to access occult type powers. And so this is one of the reasons why you'll see Christians who actually do this sort of stuff, because in reality, things aren't really what people say they are. Everybody has known that being able to master unseen forces is something that is extremely admired and desired in just about every culture and every individual. You know what I mean? Some people have had visualizations or dreams that they maybe want or desires to fly or transmute things into different material. It is what it is, okay? But the thing is like I've never asked to be in a competition with anybody, and I get tired of it. It's just the fact that I live my life in such a good way. Like, I live in a somewhat a routine way, but I don't. There's more peace inside of me. Like I don't create any of this sort of drama that people go through, and nor do I want it. If I find somebody who is filled with discord, I know not to bring them into my life or to limit my interactions with them. I know that they do not have anything to offer on any level. Okay, so yeah, I do believe in being selective. There's ways that you can communicate with people and keep them at an arm's length distance. You know what I mean? And these are the people that you call your acquaintances or your peers, okay? Like I might know somebody, but they're not going to be my buddy friend. I do not feel close enough to them to invite them into my house for me to tell them my secrets or share parts of my life with. They're just simply people I know. And in that case, then you become polite with them, because you want to make sure that you're not responsible for any sort of conflict or anything. So you're polite. You know, if they say good morning, you say good morning. You know, if there's something that you can accommodate them with, that's simple and basic. Like, for example, you know, you might have a neighbor, right? And, you know, they might need to tell people. Some people want to, you know, assist people, let them know what's going on in the community, that kind of stuff, so that, you know, they can avoid some sort of disaster if necessary, okay? But I understand, you know, I don't owe anybody anything. They don't owe me anything other than to be polite and not cause me problems. And I, in turn, do not do the same thing. But I deal with a lot of delusional people. I deal with a lot of people with mental illness, and the mental illness that is based on people's religion. And I will say, you know, what went on here was not in any way approved by the divine, and it was something that was man-made. Okay, so anyway, I do get the intuitive message that I have proved that Christians are very ignorant, they're silly, and they are definitely criminal. Okay, Christians are definitely criminal, and they feel justified in their illegal actions because of the group mentality. And what it is just a bunch of dissatisfied people who get together and feel more comfortable in a group than doing something illegal on their own. So I identify it. So like I said, you know, I find it very suspicious that my son would have his funds held. I do think that it's best for my son to possibly look for another bank. Now, like I said, I don't like banks. I prefer credit unions. So perhaps maybe my son will open an account at the credit union. I thought my son did. I don't know, whatever. But he needs to use that primarily. And then also, if he notices any sort of delays, if he notices it, that's how I am. Any sort of delays. Any sort of delays. Just like, you know, I talked about the issue, the delay in the SNAP benefits. Just the very fact that I'm a victim of human trafficking, and the very fact that there's a lot of people who are considered gang stalking, being victims of gang stalking, and a lot of these women have a specific profile, as well as the men who are victims of human trafficking or gang stalking, and the vast number of it. Okay, and I can honestly tell you that I know that there has been some sort of Christian crusade that has been flowing through, you know, different sectors of the United States, because they feel as though there's some sort of silent war, this pick and choose. Well, I tell you, the very fact that they have exhibited these sort of negative characteristics that are obviously contrary to the Ten Commandments, therefore they're also contrary to a Christ-like attitude, then we are dealing with people who are inflicting terrorism here in the United States. Okay, the message I'm getting right now is that now people understand. Yes, of course you're supposed to dress for success. Okay, some people use their opportunities, not even just at work, but their opportunities for their free time to dress nice, even in their free time. Why? Because this is a advertisement of attracting the kind of people that you want. And I'm not talking about, you know, necessarily male attention or female attention. It's just basically saying, hey, you know, these are the kind of people that I want to be around. This is the kind of life that I live. I'm attracting my tribe. The intuitive message I'm getting right now is that, okay, I understand that it was these so-called Christian groups that wanted my son to move back in with me. Not because it's scriptural, okay, but because they basically just wanted to cause trouble, okay? Christians need to be more, so these so-called Christians need to be more concerned about what's going on in their life, okay? They need to get their life together. They do not need to sit here and interfere with mine. Now, I do know that the psychic readings that these Christians get on me, which I'm not comfortable with people being fixated on me, because I'm not fixated on them, okay? What is it that they want to know? Something about me being powerful, and then me being, about my clothes. Yes, I am always going to wear my clothes. Okay, my clothes are me. I know that there's been some sort of debate, and maybe Bruce or his family was trying to make it so that I was going to change my life. Maybe it was going to bring them glory. Maybe they were going to try to get some sort of reward out of it. But you're not supposed to, you know, place bets on anybody's life or anything like that. So these people are screwed. They should have not done it in the first place. This is who I am. Okay, and I find it very offensive that somebody would even think to try to change somebody's life. Okay, and because of that, I choose not to forgive the people who participated in it. Okay, and I'm right to do that. right? Because these people really did not have my best interest at heart. Everybody's responsible for their own life. This includes, the individual groups of people who participated in it. And I don't want to keep the argument going, but going forward, I do not want people like Alyssa communicating with me. I don't want to deal with these people. I don't want to, interact or have any sort of side conversations. I do not want to be inconvenienced in any form of commerce transactions. That means if I go to Walmart, then the representative needs to work on me. I mean, serve me as she should or he should, meaning like, perform customer service as natural, as well as, when I deal with, my son goes to the bank or whatever, if he deals with any sort of strange transaction, he may need to retract his transaction and go open an account somewhere else. Okay, because I really feel as though I'm doing my part to eliminate this nightmare drama that these stupid people put in place. Okay, and I get this intuitive message that maybe some women were assisting Bruce, because Bruce was telling people some sort of sob story about, which is a lie. He never ever protested or tried to get, fight for child support or anything like that. So that's a lie. Okay, but whether, let's just say, for example, he was a decent father, like he was somebody who cared about the welfare of his son, and he was like, somebody who was, really felt as though he could do a better job as a parent or whatever, then he needed to handle that through the court system. Okay, he don't sit here and talk to people who work in a job with somebody. No, okay, you don't handle things that way. It's illegal. So then they put these illegal operations in place, okay? And this is my biggest issue with church people. It's the fact that they are actually criminals and they want to sit here and try to put some sort of righteous spin on it. And I know what I'm saying is making a lot of people angry because it's making people angry because they know that I'm from the divine. And they also know that deep down inside they are wrong. But I have the right to sit here and say, hey, you need to put an end to it. It needs to stop because I'm tired of it and I don't deserve it. And if you're not happy with your life, then it's your responsibility to change that. I'm not responsible for your problems. I think about these stories of Jesus. I do not believe that Jesus died for people's sins. I do believe that there is a lot of distortion in Christianity. And don't get me wrong, do I believe that Jesus was charitable and somebody who took it upon himself to heal people, to help people? Yeah, I do, okay? But I do not believe that he would ever make any attempts to die or sacrifice his life in any way for people who would that would behave this way. You know what I mean? No, instead he would probably give them a some sort of divine message so that they can look at their lives and change direction. Okay? Just by, I mean, it's distorted. Like what it is that mankind is evil. They are evil to the core. They're constantly fixated on themselves, which is understandable. But the fact is that mankind is very animalistic. The intuitive message I'm getting right now is everyone agrees it's time to keep church issues in the church. So going forward, I do not want any more interruptions, any more problems, any more issues, okay? And I will call people out when they're rude, right then and there. You know what I mean? Like if I'm at Walmart and what do you call it? The cashier's acting disrespectful, I'm going to call her out right then and there. You know what I mean? And I mind you, I have not encountered any rude uh, cashiers at Walmart. I really have not. I have not dealt with anything. I'm saying this as an example, okay? Because I am not going to sit here and have to deal with any sort of residual effect of what people like Alita or Terry Collins or whatever, okay? Because, the Collins had no right to do what they did, okay? And if, like I said, this whole idea of Bruce being some sort of like, a struggling father who cared so much about his son, I cringe at the thought. I cringe at it, you know what I mean? And I realize, how creative some liars can actually be. I do not, I'm letting my son now know that, because, I care about the psychological effects of parents and how the kids are viewed. The kids view them, okay? One of the reasons why I didn't want my son to know Bruce in the first place is because I knew Bruce was warped. okay? Not work, but he was rude. I knew that he, we didn't get along. He did things I didn't agree with. I knew it was going to become a long-term problem, so I decided to go ahead and raise my son on my own, okay? And I was fine with that. And I originally kept thinking, I kept playing with the idea, like maybe to even create up some sort of narrative that my son's father just died or something, like, because I knew my son was gonna be like, how come I don't have a dad, that kind of stuff, right? I remember thinking maybe I should just act like, whatever. But then I kept saying, I don't want to lie to my kid. I just knew that my mom was going to, like, she wanted my son to know Bruce. And I thought, okay, I just don't think that's a good idea. But anyway, it ended up being that way. And so, now I can see that Bruce had no real concern for my son whatsoever. He was a very fraudulent person, and he took advantage of me, and he had no right to. I do not forgive that. I don't forgive that. Especially when you'll see people who make up excuses like, oh, well, I cared about my son. When he showed no, he's basically using my son as an excuse so that he can sit here and look like he's some sort of righteous person, or and that he can get access to things like my son's maybe money, or maybe my money, or act as if we're married or something like that. And it's like, I don't trust it. I did mention that my son was trying to get some sort of seeking compensation for some sort of damage, or yeah, the accident that he got in with his wrist or whatever. And see, this whole issue of the power of attorney and stuff like that, it's a lie, okay? There is no actual physical copy of a power of attorney. And what Bruce or Rashawn or one of these people could do is sit here and say, well, I need you to cut the check to me because I have. See, this is what I'm saying. Christians are criminals. They are outright criminals. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that, they're not, the Christians that I knew were not really good skilled workers. The only one Christian person that I knew that was actually a good skilled worker was probably Roxanne Tillman. Okay, Roxanne Tillman, I would say she did bust her ass. Like, she busted her ass. She came to work, and she was somebody who actually worked. She did not use. She did say that she was a Christian, and that's how she got her job. And maybe she did get her job that way. Okay, but at least she had put the work in. Okay, she put the work in. There are some people who are sitting at this desk. They are nothing more than criminals. They are nothing more than genocide. What do you call it? Genocide conduits for, like, genocide plans or whatever. They are of no value whatsoever. Okay, and so I'm understanding that, and a lot of these people are doing nothing but putting people's lives in jeopardy because they are practicing genocide through their employment, through their jobs. Okay, like, emergency services systems not taking notice of what people are doing, flagging certain people, eliminating certain people. This should not be going on. Okay. Also, we have, these underground crime syndicates who are orchestrating things like blacklisting, human trafficking. And all of these people are using this excuse about their religion. Like I said, I want to make it very clear. I don't want to sit here and point the finger at people like who may be innocent. Like, I don't want to blame people like Joel Osteen or other preachers or anything like that. But I'm at least going to say that perhaps maybe these cults that are operating outside of these so-called these institutions of regular churches are doing things that, where does it come from? If it's coming from these real churches, like, and I'll do respect to people like Joel Osteen and all these sort of people, then, I remember hearing Joel Osteen talk. I mean, I've never been a listener of him really, but I remember hearing a snippet of what he was talking about, and he seems to be more inclusive than, I would say the average run-of-the-mill so-called Christian that I've dealt with. Okay, so I don't believe it's really coming from people like him. I do believe it's coming from just jealous people, competitive people, losers, people who don't have their life together, banding together and acting as if, well, we need to do this for God, but in fact there is no consistent faith system. This is why we have people like Alita, who's Catholic, Terry, who's a Jehovah's Witness, we got Mormons, we got all these other people, when in fact they're just, groups of people who are held together by their hate, and they're acting like it's a righteous cause. And it's these sort of people, okay, that need to be looked out for. These sort of people are the ones that need to be eliminated because they are highly problematic. They are nothing more than terrorists, and it needs to be looked at. The message I'm getting right now is that that I have that by living this a way of being upright, meaning like, I'm somebody who's hardworking, and I resent that people were willing to sit here and try to take credit for my work, or try to lean in on it, or try to, try even worse. I mean, I find it extremely offensive that these people were trying to critique me, because it's not theirs to critique. It's my work. You know what I mean? It's my work. And so, I'm very proud of that. And I'm somebody who is very driven by my work, and I care about my work. And I am not somebody who would ever want to sit here and allow somebody to get any sort of credit or acknowledgement for my work, especially if I'm not a formalized business partner with them. You know what I mean? So it angers me. And then we have these Jehovah's Witnesses that were, I believe, encouraging Terry to do this sort of stuff, acting as she had some sort of right over me. Jehovah's Witnesses, I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, I am so disappointed and disgusted in you. Yeah, I used to defend Jehovah's Witnesses, even though I chose not to be a part of them. At this point, I am very proactive in eliminating everything that caused me psychological harm. No, I will not open doors for Jehovah's Witnesses. You can knock all day. As a matter of fact, I remember there was one guy. Actually, I remember this girl. Her parents used to have this door on sign on their door, something about no peddlers, no solicitors, or religious freaks. That was on that used to be on their door, and I used to think that's brilliant. You know what I mean? Think about the peace of mind that kind of thing could have. That just brings you peace of mind. Don't come to my door if you're bringing garbage, okay? And I will say that Jehovah's Witnesses were bringing garbage. They were not there just to bring me, the watchtower and awake a couple of days ago. These people were there on a mission. These people were wanting to spy, and the reason why is because I got the intuitive message that they were impressed with the video Human Targets. Yes, they saw the video Human Targets, and I think the video Human Targets has been circulated pretty wide. But yes, the issue of Jehovah's Witnesses is that Bruce was, I guess, acting as if he was a Jehovah's Witness, and his mom was using the excuse of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's unfortunate they did what they did, but I am, I'm committed to. And I want to make it very clear, like I said, this is a tragedy. This is something that is very serious. So I feel as though this particular group they should understand that. I don't expect religious people to fully understand psychology, because I don't believe most religious people are educated. I really don't, okay? Like I said, they may have received an education, maybe like at Harvard or something, that's not necessarily associated with a faith-based group, but the minute they get around their congregation or these groups of people, okay, then it all goes out the window. I don't, and aside from that, I understand a lot of people just study in school just for the sake of studying. They want to study the information, and they want to pass the test, and once they do, it's con, okay? They don't put it into practice. So there's several different reasons as to why, people do not follow certain protocols. A lot of it is selfish. A lot of it is they want to change and bend rules and stuff like that. But when they go contrary to things that have already been studied, things that, like I said, laws are created because things have already happened as a result of people going, doing the opposite, okay? So they always create these sort of problems. So it's like people need to be law abiding, or they need to be eliminated. It's that simple. You know what I mean? Let me see if there's any other messages that I have for this morning. So I don't really know what to do with myself today. It's like it's Saturday, and I'm just thinking about what's going on, and I just get tired of it. I'm tired of dealing with other people's problems, and I'm committed to not dealing with it again. Okay, so apparently my story is trending on social media. Like I said, I don't know anything about it. I mentioned this a couple of days ago, but this is what it's saying. It's like that my story is trending on social media, and apparently a lot of people do agree with me that I do deserve compensation. Like, the first time at Murray Family Farms, when I realized that this issue was going on, and they brought in the PAS group, and then, this harassment, these people coming into my office, staring at me, being disrespectful, Selena being a little brat, and all this other stuff, Steve Murray saying inappropriate stuff, all of it, okay? I had every right to go to a lawyer and receive compensation. I had every right because I was being racially harassed. And it also seems like there's a little bit of sexual harassment there, okay? So those issues should have been taken care of in the court system, and I was prevented from doing it. Then it snowballed because it kept following me from one location to another, okay? And it should have stopped. Okay, so right now the message I'm getting right now is joy comes to those who love the New World Order. Everyone feels better and agrees that this system is better. Okay, now, like I said, these laws have been on the books for ever. I mean, like, for a very, very, very long time. But I'm just saying is that we need to stop. We need to start identifying, when people are making up rules of their own and going contrary to the law, making up, bringing in their so-called Christian, groups, or their Christian arrangements, their kingdom spouses, and all these other nightmare dramas, okay? And another issue I find just really obnoxious is how they institutionalize these so-called bizarre marriages. Like, women get bullied in the workplace because they might have a kingdom spouse that they don't know about, and then because, they might be dressed a certain way or whatever, they're married and they don't know it, and then these women are bullying them, and they're like, I don't even know what's going on. Well, your kingdom spouse probably wouldn't like you looking that way, and it's like, well, I didn't even know that I had one. You know what I mean? It's just these childish, immature things. Another thing is people should not have they should be ashamed of themselves trying to dictate, how other people live and how their relationships are. As far as I know, our marriage license involves two people, two signatures, and only two people are involved in that marriage. So going back to when I was legally married to Joel Graham, and when I had these stupid people when I was working at Flourishing Fart. These people were sitting here asking me, "Oh, don't you make food for your husband? Don't you do this?" Like, it's none of your business. It's none of your business, okay? And don't you dare sit here and try to penalize somebody in the work sector because, your husband wants to go out and pick up a burger instead of eating the spaghetti that was served last night. It's none of your business. See, and it's this sort of like logic that these people have. It's like your logic is so skewed, okay? It's skewed, okay? So, but basically, we have is a bunch of jealous people who are just grasping for straws to sock it to you. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. Anyway, yes, people have acknowledged the fact that, I have it brought a lot of attention to these illegal operations. Apparently, people want to be invited to my parties. I wish I could have a party in some way. Unfortunately, I only have this apartment. I do remember the days when I used to have people come over back in the 90s. I would say a lot of people used to filter in my house just to hang out. And I actually enjoy doing that. You know what I mean? It was fun. But, it's sad that people created such a toxic environment. They created nothing but a toxic environment while at the same time acting like they were so much better than me. You know what I mean? I'm not somebody who wants to compete, but I do understand that it's my responsibility to try to have the best quality life I'm supposed to have. The intuitive message I'm getting right now is that there is a lot of failures and brain fog with most people that are around me, meaning like these people are constantly wanting to compete against me, and I'm just somebody who's trying to make a living. I am somebody who is trying to advertise myself as a professional. I am somebody who knows that the only way that I am able to secure employment, and hopefully secure employment, is by my work ethic. That's it. I don't have anything else. I mean, they've prevented me from having some sort of network, and given the way that I've seen how Christians operate, I don't really would never feel comfortable with really anybody anyway. The only thing that I can really feel comfortable in and know is that I am somebody who is, of quality, when it comes to the workplace. So, it pisses me off that, I'm sitting here trying to provide for myself, and I have a bunch of idiotic people doing these sort of things. I don't appreciate it. And, it's not legal, it's not ethical, it's not respectable, and I immediately disregard these people, and I do not consider them my friends. The intuitive message I'm getting right now is that people are acknowledging me for my accomplishments, as well as me bringing light to this issue. There's more people talking about employment law. And see, the thing is, if these people need to approach this topic about these fake marriages. They need to approach these issues. They have to, okay? Because otherwise, I see these surface level employment lawyers that sit here and talk about workers' comp and lost wages and stuff like that. They never tackle the more difficult issues, and the reason why is because they're either limited in knowledge, or these people are a part of some sort of human trafficking ring. You know what I mean? Anyway, I'm all for the New World Order, okay? I am all for the NWO. And so this is how I live my life. And I'm very glad that C.B. Braganza has been, you know, uh, his name has been cleared from the church. Like I said, throughout the centuries, C.B. Braganza has, C.B. Braganza. In his last life, I know that he moved from place to place because of Christian intrusion, for Christian intrusion. Christians, messing up his life, competing against him. I am somebody who just wants to go to work and come home. I do not want to mess with other people. I want to do a good day's work, and once my day is over, I want to come home, and that's it. Okay, I cannot stand people. And if you want to, people are shocked because they understand that I'm somebody who will write you off. Like, I will cut you out of my life and not look back. And once you show me that you are something distasteful to me, I would prefer you just not even exist. I remember somebody did something to me one time at work, and it was just like I never looked them in the face anymore. I literally acted as if they never existed. And then they were shocked. They're like, I can't believe, why isn't Maria talking to me? Maria's not talking to me. I'm like, and I never did. I never did. I cut these people out. And if I needed something from them, I was polite. I was like, okay, good morning. Do you have the report that you were working on yesterday? And they would hand it to me. There was no more me talking to them. There was no more me, hanging out with them at the water cooler. There was no more me going out to lunch with these people. I cut them out of my life, period. Okay? And that's just how it is. It's like, because I understand if you're a toxic person, the best thing for me to do is get away from you. And I have identified a lot of people who are toxic. You know what I mean? And I would say a lot of toxicity exists within, like, the Christian religion. Or at least I would say these Christian type fake groups. I think if you were really, if people were really Christian, or really somebody who was walking in the footsteps of Christ, they wouldn't be doing that in the first place. They just wouldn't. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up this video. This video does not have any imagery in it. It doesn't have any, cute pictures or any slides. I'm not appearing in it. Nothing, okay? It's just I'm doing this on my tablet, and I felt like talking about this concern this morning because, I am looking to do, when I go out or when I do my business or transactions or something, I like having, I like very little interaction and dealing with people, because people are only nothing but problems. So like I said, when I go to Walmart, I like it when the employees just push me through the line very politely and just keep moving, just keep it moving. Okay, I don't like anybody trying to put any sort of slights, and a lot of people do that. And I noticed it, and I do suspect that what's going on with the bank is some sort of slight. I'm not comfortable with it. I'm not comfortable with it at all. Okay, and I understand that these Christians were like trying to, maybe enforce some sort of thing like, well, someone else has control, we have control over. No one has any control over somebody who's over the age of 18. So, yeah, I mean, we need to, something needs to be done in order to fix this problem, and I'm hoping somehow things are going to change, and I hope that these people who are in political positions are going to do something about it. You know what I mean? We need to clear these people out because this is not good for our country. It is horrible that this is existing in our country. We have underground groups pretending to act like they're doing something righteous when in fact these are people who are bringing our country down. It's a joke, okay? So anyway, I'm very glad that my name is absolved from churches. And, you know, I would say that any sort of issues that I receive out in the public is most likely coming from these underground fake groups, okay? So they need to be identified and they need to be eradicated. So I'm going to wrap up this video and I will be back with another video sometime later. Take care. Bye-bye.